unpopular opinion. Pride and Prejudice is not Jane Austen's best novel.
Um, okay, so this one, it's too vague. It's like, what? Okay, then choose another one that you think is better. I keep thinking like, in what way, in what category? I think where Pride and Prejudice is the best novel is Pride and Prejudice has, I think, the best pacing. I think it's the most addictive story that draws you in. If someone's new to Jane Austen, I say read Pride and Prejudice first. Um, and I think Elizabeth and Darcy have the most interesting love story around redemption. But um, the way that Pride and Prejudice is not Jane Austen's best novel to me is I think Persuasion has the best internal monologue, and I think it's so interesting the pacing without dialogue. It doesn't rely on dialogue, and I find that really interesting. Um, I think that Emma has the best banter, best dialogue. I think that Sense and Sensibility has the most character development. Um, so I think it just depends on the category. What are you thinking?
So I agree that I think it's the best one to start with. Like if you're just coming to Austen, I think start with Pride and Prejudice. I think what you were saying with pacing is what basically the same as what I say about the plot for Pride and Prejudice. The plot is so nice, easygoing. It flows so well. That's why it's so easy to adapt, I would say. And something that I chatted to Sarah Dass about when she was adapting Persuasion is that's what she struggled with the most with that novel, is because there's not enough plot to kind of pull out to then adapt it. And I was like, that is so interesting and so true. I would say for me, because Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice for me just like battle for like the top. In my feelings on it is that Pride and Prejudice. Oh my god, I just like, it's like stop myself, it's so hard. Okay, so I think Persuasion is Austen's best written work. I think it's a testament to her writing journey. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. Like some part of me just feels like that is Austen's love letter to all of her fans that maybe shouldn't even realize she would have so many fans. I can't imagine she would ever estimate like what it's become. But yeah, I feel like that is like her final love letter because she was writing that when she was dying. And I feel like Pride and Prejudice is, I don't know, I kind of feel like Pride and Prejudice was really special to Austen. I think you can sense that like it's almost an amalgamation of everything that makes all of her other novels good. You know, it has great characters, it has great plot, the romance is, epic. It's just, yeah, it's fantastic. You've got the locations, like I love that about Pride and Prejudice, that they move around so much. So I I don't, it's really difficult. Like you said, it's difficult because it's vague. It's like, it's not her best work. And it's like, well, what is the alternative? I could argue that Persuasion is her best work. And I would do if it was on writing quality. But then if you're thinking about like everything, I'm like, for me, I could argue that Pride and Prejudice is her best work because I'm literally just like, well, it's got a bit of everything in.
I feel the same way. I think Pride and Prejudice is the most. I wasn't expecting to say this, actually. I thought I was going to argue more for Persuasion. I think Pride and Prejudice, just like you said, is the most well rounded, has the most balance. It has amazing plot movement, like we've talked about. It has iconic dialogue. Think about how it starts and how iconic that opening scene is. It has those moments where Lizzie has that internal experience that she shares with us, that's shared with no one else, that is similar to Anne Elliot's experience throughout Persuasion. And so I think overall Pride and Prejudice may win out, which is different than what I would have said in the past. But I do think Persuasion has so much nuance and sophistication. The way that she can get us so attached to the story and the experience and the characters without having the movement of the dialogue.
Oh gosh, when you just said sophistication, then I felt that. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
that's such a good word to kind of encapsulate Persuasion. It really is. I'll throw a different thought out there on Pride and Prejudice. Do you think that we think that the plot is easygoing and you know, we always encourage people to read that first. Do you think that's actually the book itself, or do you think that's because we're also exposed to elements of Pride and Prejudice because of like the adaptations and everything that really just like showcase the whole book in such a good way that I'm literally just like, if we had no adaptations, would we feel the same way about about Pride and Prejudice? Do you know what I mean? I don't know how to quite explain this, but it's like, do you think our thoughts on it are kind of clouded slightly because there's so much exposure to Pride and Prejudice?
That's a really good point, because in my opinion, there's no adaptation of Persuasion that measures up, and I think we have honestly three really good adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, and I wonder if that does have an influence. That I think that's really good to think about. When I think about reading both of them, Pride and Prejudice sucks me in at a certain point, particularly once she gets to Pemberley, and after I'm sitting there and I'm so filled with emotion I can't put it down. Like I have to get through it. I have to keep reading it. Persuasion, I have a different experience where it moves me so much that I have to like pause and reflect on parts that I just read, like the carriage scene. So I have a different experience with both that I love.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a good point, actually, is the ease of reading it, like just that it brings you so much joy. Like I find that as well. I feel like there's a nostalgia to Pride and Prejudice for a lot of people as well. Like for me, because that was the first text I experienced, it brings me so much joy to re-explore it. Like, just, you know what I mean? So I think that plays a part for me as well.
Yeah. I think so. We both were introduced to Pride and Prejudice before Persuasion, right?
Yeah, definitely. Which I'm so glad about as well, because I don't think I could have ever appreciated Persuasion at the age that I was introduced to Pride and Prejudice. You know, I just couldn't. Even if I'd seen an adaptation, like, it would not have sat with me like the way that Pride and Prejudice does.
I completely agree. I was wondering what would have happened if I were introduced to Persuasion first. And I feel the same way because I was able to get into Pride and Prejudice at a young age. But I remember telling friends when I was younger, oh, the first four chapters of Persuasion are slow and you just have to make it through those. And then it really is incredible. Give it a chance. But now on this reread, this last reread of Persuasion, I've loved the introduction and I find it so funny and subtle and nuanced. And I'm really, so yeah, I think there's maybe a level of maturity you have to enjoy Persuasion.
Yeah. It's interesting that we're both like, for that when it comes to what's considered her best work, isn't it funny that we automatically have both been like Persuasion or Pride and Prejudice? Isn't that really interesting? Like, I feel like it trumps even your just general preference, because I know your favorite Sense and Sensibility, but I feel like when it comes down to what is her best work, it that's I feel like it is less subjective in a sense, that it's literally just like, well, actually, what's stood the test of time the best out of all of her work? What's the most, you know, well loved, which is the most well known text? And I feel like in that sense, you have to argue that it is Pride and Prejudice. But I get that for some people, if they don't like that text, or if this person writing this has come from the stance of like, in terms of writing quality, yeah, I can get that as well. So it's difficult, isn't it? But I'd be inclined to disagree with this person and be like, Pride and Prejudice is her best text in the grand scheme of things, like overall.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, I really resonate with what you just said, because isn't that so interesting that my favorite Sense and Sensibility, but I'm not even trying to argue that it's her best novel. Like I see some flaws in it. Like we've talked about this before, but I think that Colonel and Brandon and Marianne getting together at the end is wrapped up too quickly. There isn't enough there. Like there should have been another chapter. And then aren't you pretty partial to Emma as well?
I love Emma. Yeah, it's not my favorite text, but I do really love it. I think it's fantastic. Like, in terms of like a character study, Emma is so good. It's so fun. Yeah. I just think that's a great novel as well. And also, like, I love exploring it, like I have done recently, where kind of seeing it through like a murder mystery stance. Like, I know no murders happen, but the fact that it's like this close knit town where everything happens, and the way that Jane Austen builds the characters is so similar to the way that like Christie builds characters. You know, that's something that's really stood out to me, and yeah, like I kind of love that. I love Northanger Abbey for like loads of different reasons as well. You know, I love the commentary on novels at the time and like reading novels at the time. I love the gothic elements like that it brings that in, and yeah, I mean, there's something to love in. This is the issue. There's something to love in all of her texts, but I understand why people place Pride and Prejudice at the top. I do the same thing because I'm literally just like, it's just the best. It is just technically the best text, I suppose. Like, you know what I mean? It's difficult because she has like just like a few, and they're also like different. So it's literally just like what brings in the best qualities of all.
I think it's Pride and Prejudice. I really think it is. But I just have to point out the only one we have not mentioned yet is Mansfield Park. But I will say
Strategic.
neither of our favorite. But I will say that in college, my academic supervisor taught a Jane Austen summer course, and she was always arguing that Mansfield Park was the best text thematically, and I couldn't
That's interesting.
why, but I just wanted to put that out there.
You know what's actually so funny is when I was writing my dissertation at uni, my dissertation was probably like 80% Mansfield Park. Did you read my diss? I can't even remember. But it was like 80% Mansfield Park because I literally had so much of my diss focused on like Mary Crawford and stuff. So yeah, a lot of it was on Mansfield Park. I think Mansfield Park's the best to analyze. This is the thing. There's something to take from all the text. For me, Mansfield Park is probably the one that I could talk the most on. One, because I have like such a polarizing like view on it, but also it's just layer upon layer, and each character's so significantly in their own right. They're each kind of controversial, which is absolutely fascinating. Like to have a text where it's like nobody's likable. In my eyes, you guys, or nobody's like universally likable. That's fascinating to me. I'm just like, what on earth is this?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, when you said that, Mansfield Park is the best to go back and analyze. I think you can see new perspectives every time you read it. That is such a good point. I think Mansfield Park, personally at least, is the least fun to read, like the opposite of Pride and Prejudice sucking you in, but there's so much interesting analysis, like the fact that a lot of people aren't even rooting for the heroine, right? Like a lot of people like Mary Crawford over Fanny. Yeah, there's a lot there with Mansfield Park.
It's dark, it's heavy compared to Austen's other stuff. So, you know, if you really loved Austen for the light-hearted banter and, you know, the witty romance and all of that, like you come to Mansfield Park, you're literally just like, what is going on now? Like what is even happening? So yeah, that's just,
who's this woman with her pug? And
yeah. What is going on? That, oh my gosh, so funny. Like of all the characters in Mansfield Park I can relate to, I'm literally just like, I'm in my Lady Bertram era. It's just me and Hoggy, like you just chill.
I'm in my Lady Bertram era.
Just let things just happen. I'm just like, I'm at peace with everything. Just let things happen around me. I'll just love my dog. I'm cool.
So not Lady Bertram, but that was hilarious.
Oh man, so funny. Yeah, I mean, I've got to disagree with this person. I love this topic as an unpopular opinion because I think it does bring up like such a massive debate, and I'd love to hear what other people have to think, but like in the comment section, or like DM me on Instagram or Kaylee or whatever, and because I do think this is a fascinating topic. I feel like it's interesting, isn't it?
I would love to hear in the comments just what people think the best novel is categorically related to specific themes, like who has the best character development, best dialogue, just a lot of the categories we've mentioned, because I think it's a different answer based on what you're looking for.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And I feel like if you've got to place something at the top, you have to look at it as kind of a overriding answer. And I think that is interesting when people start to think of it like that. And maybe we'll all come to the idea that it's Pride and Prejudice. But I'd love to hear from this. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, people who put this, I'd love to know like what it is that's literally just like, no, I can't place Pride and Prejudice at the top. Because if there is like a specific reason, like I'd love to know that, because yeah, we could throw that into another unpopular opinions episode. Like, Pride and Prejudice isn't the best because, and then, you know, we could discuss that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hope the person who sent this does respond, because I would love to. I think both of our guesses is that they'll say persuasion, but imagine if it's not persuasion and it's another. I would just love to hear the reasons.
It might be your, like, whatever, your past tutor. It's Mansfield Park, and I'll just be like, friend, you're just gonna have to come on for an episode because I need clarity.
It's Sanditon.
I know, I'll literally just be like, okay, but like that's not fit. It's the best because it had potential that was never like, that never came to fruition. I'll be like, what? I don't think that classes. I don't think that counts.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So we both landed on Pride and Prejudice is the best. Okay.
Yeah. We'll come back in like 2028 and we'll be like, well, they will have digged up like a new novel, like a Jane Austen novel. Like they will have found like a lost works. And it'll be like the best novel ever. Like, who knows? Can you imagine if that happened?
Can you?
I would die. I would just die. That would be the most insane news ever.
Someone should write a book about that plot. Someone finding the last work of Jane Austen that's fully completed.
Oh my god, can you imagine? Or someone finds all of her letters and they weren't burnt. They were just buried somewhere.
That would be vicious. There'd be so much fodder in there.
I can't even imagine. Yeah, I hope that never happens, actually, just because like the world we live in now, like with the cancel culture and everything, I'm like, lordy lord, we don't want to be finding Jane Austen's lost letters, that is for sure.